Welcome to A Billion Realities, where we explore all topics related to spirituality, psychology, and the power of the mind. And now your host, Jessica Gerlach.
PodcastCadet.com provides a one-on-one private consultation for anyone, whether you are just starting or already have a podcast that you want to take to the next level. They have the professionals to help you. Visit podcastcadet.com today and use the code REALITY20 to save 20% off your entire purchase. I've personally used this service, and I can assure you, you will not be disappointed.
Today on the show, we are speaking to wellness chef, herbalist, holistic nutritionist, and author, Kassia Fiedor. Not only is Kassia a private chef, she incorporates herbal wisdom and superfoods into her recipes, which you can find in her amazing cookbook, which we will be discussing today. Kassia teaches people how to empower themselves with the deliciousness that nature has to offer and how holistic living contributes to spiritual health as well. Welcome to the show, Kassia.
Hi, Jessica. Thanks so much for having me.
It's such a pleasure to have you. So tell our audience where you are joining us from today.
So I'm currently in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm originally from California, but I have migrated here and it's beautiful. Loving the fall colors.
Amazing. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So where did you grow up and what's your cultural background?
Yeah, so I grew up in a little rural mountain town called Crest in San Diego in California, and just very lucky to have grown up on a couple acres and just the beauty of nature surrounding. So yeah, it was just an absolutely gorgeous place to grow up. About 30 minutes east of the ocean and really close to the Mexican border, actually. So very deserty and dry climate.
Wow.
And yeah. But my kind of cultural background is both of my parents are Slavic. So my dad is Polish and my mom is mostly Yugoslavian. So.
Oh, wow. And that's crazy. I didn't know that actually about you. I live in Serbia, so.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool.
I'm in former Yugoslavia now. Yeah. I had no idea that your background was Slavic. That's very interesting.
Yes. Well, I don't have too much of a connection with it, and I haven't been. I've always wanted to go to Poland and Yugoslavia. But yeah, my grandparents spoke the language, but unfortunately, it wasn't passed down to me. So something to learn in the future.
I was going to say, there's always time to learn. It's never too late.
Mm-hmm.
It was really difficult to learn Serbian, but it took me about 10 years, but I'm pretty okay now.
Oh, wow. Good for you. Yeah. Congratulations.
Well, it took a while. So,
it's hard.
It is. It's really difficult. How would you say that your upbringing and the environment that you grew up in influenced who you are and what you're doing today?
Yeah, so growing up that close to the earth really gave me a reverence for nature and for plants. And that's really what I incorporate now into my work. I grew up sort of on Native American land, not officially, but unofficially. So I would ride, I'm a horse rider. So I would ride my horse all around the trails behind our house. And I would see these metates, which are these kind of like a mortar and pestle that the Native Americans would grind into the stones and the big rocks there. So I would see those and I would just have this insatiable curiosity for, what kind of foods did they use to heal themselves and what kind of herbs are around that are medicinal. And so just as a kid, seeing these herbs and these plants, I'm like, what can I do with these? I just had this kind of innate curiosity about it. So I just had this knowing, this deep knowing from the beginning that nature had everything that we need, that nature offers her healing.
Fascinating. Really, really
Yeah.
amazing. So you just always felt that connection. I think that's incredible. And I think that it's easier to feel
Yeah.
it, of course, when you're in an environment that supports it. You know, if you're in the city and you grow up in a tiny little apartment and in a concrete jungle,
Yeah.
I'm sure it's very difficult to feel that type of connection. So it's pretty
So
amazing.
different. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel very, very blessed for my upbringing and where I grew up, and just, I was kind of a, a tomboy, just running around on the trails and spent a lot of time outdoors. So
I can
that was
relate.
really fun.
Very
Really?
cool. Yep, absolutely. I was
Oh,
outside all
cool.
day, every day, and exploring and building things in the woods. And yeah, that was the 80s.
Yep. Same for me.
That's awesome. So when did you first realize that you had a passion for creating holistic cuisine?
So as far as the food, the holistic food that I create, which is mostly what my focus is nowadays, I've always been pretty food obsessed. So for some reason, I was always a vegetarian as a child and all through my 20s. And so I had to kind of get creative with vegetables, you know. My parents weren't naturally vegetarian. They were trying to force meat on me, but I just never wanted it. I never had an inclination towards meat. And so it just kind of sparked in me this natural, creativity with vegetables, and I had to be creative with them. My dad had a garden, and so I always grew up with kind of organic vegetables.
Mhm.
Um, but I think this is kind of what sparked that journey toward my holistic cooking and interest in food as medicine. So I eventually went to holistic nutrition school, but I internshipped at a place called Three Stone Hearth in Berkeley, California. And they are just an amazing, amazing organization that is influenced by the work of Weston A. Price. You probably are familiar, but Weston A. Price Foundation focuses on traditional foods from all around the world. And what are those common, lines that you can find in each traditional culture? And for many cultures, it's like fermented foods like kombucha and kefir and beet kvass and
Mm,
sauerkraut and things like that. But they also gave me such an appreciation for really, truly, truly nutrient dense food that can be healing. And so during this internship, I, learned so much about how to prepare foods in the correct way, in a way that really allowed the nutrients to shine,
mhm.
and with this medicinal focus. So everything was organic, like to the max, and they actually used a lot of meats because traditional cultures do use a lot of meat. And so that
Right.
was my first introduction to actually eating meat that was uh, raised in an ethical way, regenerative agriculture, um, and then also killed in a very ceremonial, sacred manner. So I was like, okay, I can get on board for this. This is so conscious and so just really, really sacred. And so
Wow.
that was really the beginning of my journey towards being a chef. I learned how to be a chef, but I also learned to appreciate nutrient dense, healing food as medicine. And so that's when I started to incorporate my schooling in holistic nutrition into my private chef business. I was living in San Francisco, and I started cooking for clients there.
Mhm.
So
I think that's
yeah.
what makes you stand out to me so much is
Mm,
the whole holistic approach and the kind of
yeah.
medicinal approach and all, the herbal
Mhm.
stuff. It's just amazing to me.
Thank
So,
you. Thank
speaking of
you.
which, you have an amazing cookbook out. Can you tell us about the cultural influence behind those recipes?
Thank
And the name of
you.
the book.
Yeah. So the book is called Cocina Holistica, Plant-Powered Recipes Inspired by Guatemalan Superfoods. So I am a free spirit. I have traveled a lot, and I actually lived in Guatemala for 5 years before moving to Nashville. And there's so many beautiful superfoods in Guatemala that many of us here in the States recognize or, maybe have heard of. And this cookbook really, it's a memoir that reflects my love of nature, of cooking, of travel, and true healing through foods. And I just had an amazing journey living there. I was married to a man who was actually the reason for moving down there. He worked for USAID, and he came out of the closet a year after we moved there, and so we got a divorce. And I was faced with this decision: do I move back to the States, where I left my business, where I have nothing, or plant my roots here and really dive in? And I really dove in.
Wow, what a story.
Yes, it's a crazy story, but it all ended so beautifully. And I truly feel that I was meant to be there and do this work. So what I did was I started cooking for clients as a private chef and giving cooking classes to people. And this book is really a reflection of all of the kind of the inquiry and the curiosity that I had around all of the ancestral foods there. So there's a lot of Mayan influence and indigenous ancestral foods and plants and herbs that the people in Guatemala don't even use anymore. I mean, they've forgotten their own roots, right?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so I'm here, as an expat, utilizing all of these incredible foods, these ancestral foods in my plant-based cooking, and I'm teaching them how to use their own foods that grow in their own backyards, in my kind of healthy California style plant-based cooking. It's so funny, right? It's so funny, but I was like, okay, I've got something here. I'm going to do a cookbook and kind of highlight each of these beautiful foods and herbs and ingredients. So that's really what the book is about.
Honestly, that is so incredible. And I saw one woman, I think it was a testimonial, she said, this is like a love letter to Guatemala.
Yeah, it is.
So what are some of those superfoods that you can tell us about so that we can be on the lookout for them?
Yeah, so a big one is amaranth, which is an ancestral Mayan food. It was grown kind of all over Central and Southern America. So this is an incredibly sacred plant. They actually would use it in their religious ceremonies, and they considered it almost a deity. So this was an ancient. They call it a grain, but it's really a seed.
Wow.
And it's very, very interesting. It has such a history. So I actually connected with a really beautiful community of women in Guatemala who are widows, and they are rebuilding their communities through the growing and harvesting and selling of amaranth. And the crazy thing is, it was banned, many years ago during the conquest, because they saw how revered this plant was, this seed was. So they banned it. The Catholics banned it, and anyone who was cultivating it was oppressed. And this is kind of how one of the ways that they kept them down, right? And they kept them from practicing their religion. And so it was just really cool to meet with this indigenous community in Guatemala who, I mean, they've been through a recent civil war from the 80s, and they're still kind of rebuilding, and they saved the seeds, And they are now, reintroducing this into the market and reconnecting to their history, their culture, and able to thrive, by selling this beautiful amaranth. So I love that story. I put that story in my book, and it's just like, okay, this is a sacred grain, right? But we've maybe heard of it here in the States, but we don't realize all the history.
Wow, so, that is fascinating. I've heard of that happening with I didn't know about that one. Yeah. I think I did hear a story like that. It was another sacred food that was, pretty much taken away from a group in South America. I can't remember what it was. It might have been like what corn used to be there or something like that. Okay. But anyway.
Could have been like maca too or something like that.
It might have been maca. My sister loves maca. I used that recently for the first time. It's harder for me to, it's harder for me to get a lot of stuff because I'm in Serbia. So when I go back to the US, I get to try kind of the things that are a little more like, popular there. But
for sure. I get it.
Very cool.
So there's one other one that's really cool called Ramon, and it's a really tall tree that has these seeds that grows in the jungle there, up by the Mayan temples. And so Ramon is really cool because you can roast the seeds, and it tastes very similar to coffee. So that's kind of being introduced into the market here in the States as a coffee substitute. And it doesn't have caffeine, yet it has a lot of nutrients and really nourishing. So another fun one to watch out for is Ramon.
I think I saw that on your Instagram page. Yeah, I'm going to have to. I would love to try that one because I'm a big coffee lover, but I know that it's not healthy to have too much coffee every day. So,
I struggle with it myself.
It's coffee culture here where I live. People many coffees a day. You can't walk down the street without a neighbor saying, "Come for coffee, come for coffee."
Oh, I love that though. That's like connection,
I do too. Yeah, I'm like, I already had 3. I can't have any more.
Exactly. Yeah, no more. You need the Ramon.
I need the Ramon, and I got to introduce the people here to the Ramon, it sounds like.
Oh, I don't know. That might be a tough one.
It could be. They're very traditional around here. So what would you say you're the most proud of regarding this book?
Let's see. I think I'm really proud of just kind of bringing more awareness to the ancient superfoods in Guatemala, and just Mayan superfoods in general, and just kind of connecting the culture with their roots, right? I mean, it's kind of strange that this white girl is saying that, but it's really like people were very grateful to learn about the foods that they had in the backyards or the foods that the indigenous ancestors were using. And I'm like, you know what, you can use this, and it's so nourishing, and you don't have to ship your stuff from Amazon, so it's like I really enjoyed that aspect of just kind of reintroducing these foods to the Guatemalans specifically, but also just my book in general is just like a celebration of indigenous foods around the world, just connecting wherever you are, just kind of this awareness that the land has, nourishment to provide. So I think I am proud of that part of my cookbook. I'm also proud of the fact that I designed the entire thing.
Wow, did you? It's beautiful.
I did. Okay. I did. It's a really pretty book, and I am very proud of it. I did the whole thing myself, and
wow.
I worked with a really, really wonderful photographer down there, but as far as the layout and everything, I did that. So
it's beautiful. Really, it's so colorful and it's so enticing as well. It really makes you want to try those things or learn how to make these recipes, and very nice.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I have to say, I'm so impressed that you went through something which I feel it was very traumatic. Your husband came out of the closet. What was that like for you to move past that and stay in a country where it's so obviously not home?
Yeah, yeah, it was very challenging at first, but obviously, a very traumatic experience. And I am just so, so grateful that I had lovely friends down there already that I had connected with. And I couldn't have done it without the support of these local friends that I had in Guatemala. Um, and so I also had a friend that was opening a juice bar at that time. And they were like, "Do you want to come work there?" And that was sort of my sign that I was meant to stay. And even though I wasn't feeling 100% proficient in Spanish, you know, I I was like, I got to do this. This is going to be challenging, but I think I can overcome this. Uh, and I did it. I mean, it feels really good to have overcome that.
Right.
I just, it was maybe a year of very, very tumultuous, challenging times of just like not knowing what was up and what was down. It was like the rug was pulled from under me. And
Totally.
yeah, and the State Department wasn't particularly uh, nice to me. It was like, "Oh, you're getting a divorce. Okay, you need to you're on your own. You're not a diplomat anymore." Like it was
Wow.
very surreal how it all went down. So I had to find an apartment immediately. I had to, start working. And I mean, it all just flowed really perfectly. And so I do believe, looking back on this experience, that was all meant to be. And I wouldn't be here now without that experience. But I'm
True.
just so grateful for an incredible support group down there and an amazing therapist. I
Yes,
mean, I had an
necessary.
incredible, yes, so necessary. I had an amazing therapist down there, and just opportunities to really thrive in what I did. And just it's so surprising, but the work that I did and the gifts that I had to offer were very needed at that time.
Wow.
Guatemala is sort of 10, 15, 20 years behind where the states are, or where California is, where I was coming from. And so they were really just at the beginning stages of appreciating organic foods and
Wow.
talking about holistic lifestyle. So it really worked in her that they were just starting to be on the lookout for these keywords, for these things, for these holistic things, organic, nutrition, wellness. And so it was something that helped me leverage my business. And it really worked out for me really
You,
beautifully. So
yeah, that's
yeah,
really
Guatemala
incredible.
healed my heart, is what I say.
Yes.
What I say in the book is like, Guatemala really healed my heart. Just the people, the land, the plants, everything. So
I'm a big believer in, the fact that we create much of our own path in life, with our thoughts, our beliefs, and our
yeah.
behavior. But when I hear a
Mhm.
story like yours, it makes me realize, and I think I feel this way anyway, that there's sometimes are certain divine plans at play,
100%. 100%. Yep,
So
that's exactly it.
incredible. So how would you say you've evolved in your holistic cuisine and nutrition career from the time when you started until now?
Good question. I think I've become, with more experience and just working with a variety of clients and different illnesses, I've become more proficient in just different whatever illness I'm working with, and proficient with what I have to offer and my confidence level. So I've really kind of honed in on what I do, which is empower people through foods and allow people a chance to kind of elevate their consciousness through connecting with their bodies and their innate intelligence and their own wisdom. And it's like every body is different. And so the ability to support someone through that and connect them to the foods that are best for them, I think I've honed in on that, and that just comes from experience, right? That just comes from working with different types of bodies and different types of clients.
Right, definitely. So I remember from a previous conversation that we had that you're big on health sovereignty. Can you explain what exactly that means and why it's important to you personally?
Yeah. So health sovereignty is really big for me, and I've just started kind of realizing that that's what I've been about for many, many years. But the word sovereignty hasn't really become as apparent or as important as it has now during this time, during the last 7 or 8 months.
Definitely.
Yeah, but where it comes into my work is that I've always believed that we have true empowerment over our bodies, right? Whether that's creating our own realities or working through an illness or just trusting our own innate immune systems. It's this knowing on a deep intuitive level what is best for us and not turning over our power to our doctor or the government. You know, this victim mentality, or I personally believe that's more of a disempowering, like victim mentality, just to be like, okay, doctor, tell me what to do. It's like we have to be our own advocates for our health, for our bodies.
Couldn't agree more.
And I've always been yeah, right. I mean, we have to tap into that innate intelligence. We have it. It's there. Our bodies are wise, and that's what health sovereignty means to me.
Beautiful. It's an amazing point as well. So what would you say is the most misunderstood or overlooked aspect of nutrition or holistic living?
So the most misunderstood aspect, I think, is that, well, there's just so much information out there that I think it's been difficult for people to discern what diet is right for them or what foods are best for them. I think that's one of the most kind of challenging things in the nutrition world, but also in the just the world of holistic nutrition, recognizing that each body is different and allowing people to discern what's best for them. And I have never been an advocate for a particular diet, you know? And so it's always been like, okay, let's see what's best for your body, what you're going through, and helping people tune into what foods are best and not being particularly limited to one particular diet, because I think that's really restricting.
Right.
And so I think there's just so many diets out there, right? And so many saying like, this is the best one for this is going to make you lose weight or whatever. And it's not about that.
Yeah.
It's not about that for me.
It's like about balancing the entire organism and what makes you feel the best, right? Is that
exactly?
So what about, I think that you're so on point with that. Obviously, you know a lot more about it than I do anyway, but there's always like, oh, you're blood type A or B or B positive, so you need to eat meat and nuts or whatever, it's very confusing. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I like to kind of draw from each one, see what resonates, and leave whatever doesn't, because it's just there's not one particular one that's going to work. And I think that black and white way of thinking can be really limiting,
right,
to our psyches. And I want to create freedom and limitless within within my eating and within my lifestyle. So
I think that the word discernment was perfectly placed because it's really about that, I think, from an outside perspective anyway, about everything that you're doing. Is it difficult to teach people how to prepare food the way that you do?
Yeah, I think for some people it can be a little bit overwhelming in the beginning, because when they watch my Insta stories, it's like, oh, wow, she's doing a lot and, she's throwing a lot in there, and oh, I could never do that. But then once we get in the kitchen, I love cooking classes. I love private cooking classes. one-on-ones with my clients in their kitchens. And so it really allows me to show them how easy it truly can be, you know. Just it doesn't take a ton of ingredients. It takes the mentality and the mindset of like, okay, let's make this simple pesto. How can we boost it? How can we make it extra medicinal? Oh, well, we can, you know, throw in some turmeric, or we can throw in some extra, some chard or some kale. You know, it's kind of a shift in thinking rather than like, oh, it has to be this way. And if you don't do it this way, it's going to be a fail. So that's always how I work with my clients in the kitchen, is just sort of like mindset. And so that it depends on the person.
Right.
For some, it can be more difficult, but if they have an inclination towards cooking and they love cooking, then it's easy, right? And I give a lot of tips in my classes. I give a lot of like kitchen hacks, like using your food processor for chopping instead of you know, wearing yourself out.
Yes.
Those kind of things. So I make it easy.
Good. I love to cook, so it's definitely right up. I'm
Great.
gonna have to try some of your recipes and see if I can get some of those ingredients here.
Yeah.
Cooking's always been a huge part of my life, but you know, a Italian grandmother will do that to you.
Oh, for sure. I love that. I love Italians. They love food.
They do. I've always loved food too. I think that's why I like to cook. But yeah, growing up around her, it was like
Oh,
we had to be in the kitchen with her from the age of 7. You know, she always had us doing
so
something.
fun.
It was fun.
That's so wonderful. That's really,
Yeah,
really great.
yeah. It was a, you know, very tight-knit time when we were little. It was cute. So
I love that.
when your clients start eating more holistically, nutritiously, what kind of results do they notice? And what do you notice in them?
So I can give you an example of one of my clients that had fatty liver, and he had gone to his doctor. This was in Guatemala. He had gone to his doctor. His numbers were so high, I mean, through the roof. Um, he was like, you know, pre-diabetic at the point of almost becoming diabetic. And he came to me and he asked me if I could help him cook and just kind of focus on a more healing diet that would, I tailored a menu and a diet that would really nourish him and allow him to feel fulfilled, because he was a big guy, he loved to eat. And so allow him to feel really fulfilled and like satisfied, but
Mhm.
using kind of gluten-free and lower carb substitutions and really targeted towards fatty liver. And so the results were amazing. I mean, I couldn't believe we watched his numbers. He would go in and get tested regularly, and watching his progress was so rewarding, so beautiful, and seeing him see those numbers and see the progress, seeing him lose a little belly fat and feel better and connect to his food more and realize, oh, I don't have to be eating, you know, bread with every meal, or I don't have to be
Yes.
eating like these heavy meals to feel good. Um, that was really cool. So it's really nice to see, when my clients can actually get numbers and results in front of them from their doctor. You know, not everyone
Yes.
does that. Not
Right. It's
everyone does
hard.
that, but yeah, it's hard. But when you have something like fatty liver, then you have to watch those numbers. And so that was a very apparent, you know, measurement that we could see that the way he was eating was really changing his life and changing his diet and or changing his health.
It
Um,
transformed him, and that's so
mhm.
reward. It must be so rewarding for you. I think that would just be amazing to see that process. And so
Yeah.
fatty liver is from obviously fatty foods, but also, right,
Mhm.
alcohol as well.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. He
Hmm.
loved alcohol. He loved just he overate. He just ate a lot of sugar, which turns to fat, and yeah, just an overabundance of like processed foods. And
Ugh, worst.
yeah, a lot goes into it, but it's not necessarily, you know, only alcohol. its diet too.
Oh, for
But
sure. Yeah, I think
yeah,
sugar's a big problem in our society.
yeah.
I'm not a fan of sugar anyway, but of
Hmm.
course I have it once in a while, but I try to just
Yeah,
use any type of replacement for sugar whenever I can. But
good for you.
thanks. I've never been a big fan of sugar, but I do like things like cheese and
Oh,
other
I
things.
love cheese.
So do I. I'm like a big,
God.
cheese lover.
Even
Yeah.
though I'm super sensitive to dairy, I still will do cheese once in a while, and I'll just take an enzyme, and usually that takes care of any of the
Yeah.
repercussions.
Same here, same here. But I'm never gonna
Yeah.
give up cheese. I know that, but sugar I could
Mm-mm.
definitely go without. Thank God.
Yeah. Yes.
I feel
Hmm.
bad for people who have a sweet tooth, but there are alternatives that can be just as satisfying, like you were just explaining with this man, your client. If you can
Hmm.
replace those things and still feel satisfied, then you're winning.
Exactly. Exactly. That's what it's all about. Yep. And everything in moderation too, like you were saying with the sugar. I
Yeah,
mean, a couple of tablespoons here and there is really not going to hurt you, but
yeah.
also just focusing on the substitutes or like leaving it out. Yeah.
Whenever you can, right? So
Yeah.
let's talk herbs. I love herbs.
Oh,
Has the use of herbs always been a big thing for you in your recipes from the start, or is that something that sort of evolved?
I think I've used herbs probably most of my career and most of just my life. I've just always, I think, since growing up on such a rural land and kind of experimenting with different herbs when I was little, like making, just little poultices and things or
Mhm.
teas.
So cool.
I've always had this awareness that plants can be medicinal. And so I mean, I never really knew how to use them. I didn't know what I was doing until I actually went to herb school. I went to a beautiful school up in Sebastopol, California, north of San Francisco, called California School of Herbal Studies. And they have this gorgeous, gorgeous herb garden. And it was a 10-month program of learning, how to use herbs therapeutically. And so that really, supercharged my ability to start incorporating them more into foods, like more strategically.
Hmm.
But I've always seen herbs as, little superfoods. I mean, they truly are medicinal. They're truly full of so much nourishment, antioxidants, phytonutrients, and incorporating them into every meal or everything you're making is a really easy way to boost nutrition in your foods, in your diet.
For sure. Yep, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So, would you say that herbs and natural foods are connected to the spiritual journey that you're on?
100%. So, yeah, I think that food and plants and herbs have this way of making us feel connected to each other, to our land, to Gaia. Um, we've really evolved with plants. I mean, if you think about it, we've really, it's been us and the plants
Yeah.
for forever. I had this wonderful teacher named David Crow from a company called Floricopia, and they do essential oils. But he has this incredible, incredible way of um, thinking very cosmically about plants. And I
Oh,
think through him, I have really learned to appreciate that nature has this kind of pranic intelligence, this really beautiful wisdom. And I've started to see my own divinity mirrored in this intelligence, if that makes sense.
definitely.
Um, he says the human body is made in the image of plants. And I'm like, yes, that resonates with me so much. Um, and we would, like in his classes, we would sit and meditate on, we would kind of breathe in the essential oil and we would meditate on our biological unity with these plants. And it's like, wow, okay.
Oh my God, I would love to do something like that.
Right? Like that is my spirituality. And it's been a journey of learning to accept that and to accept like that that's okay, and that's
Mhm.
authentic to me, and I'm still learning what this connection means. But I think that everything is an integrated whole, right? And the same spirit that moves through nature and plants and herbs moves through us.
Yes.
And
Life
so that's
force.
exactly the life force, pranic energy, the chi. And so we're all connected. And yeah, I just love kind of seeing food and herbs and plants in this way. And so that's kind of how I can create this sacred aspect of eating. Like, well, if we ponder that and we really truly meditate on that while we're eating, it's like, okay, that's church, right? That is
Yeah, conscious eating for
beautiful,
sure.
conscious,
Conscious creation
conscious.
as well. Yeah,
You're right. You're right.
that's unreal. I love it. It's so interesting to me.
Yeah.
What,
Yeah. I
so,
also see nature as like, so nature has this organizing system, like this self-organizing system. And this is kind of what I've been talking about a lot in my stories, my Instagram stories, the last few months with this whole virus and whatever you want to call it. But I see the way that we eat and nature as having this self-organizing system that can bring this genetic kind of intelligence and instruction into our bodies, and we can kind of use that to guide our own healing, right? And so it's like this
definitely.
very empowered way of seeing how we can not take control over our immune systems, but like just really nourish and support our immune systems with this innate intelligence, this wisdom that nature has to offer.
For sure. And just when you talk about this topic, it even reminds me of sacred geometry, for
For
example,
sure.
those
Yeah.
patterns that exist in, nuts and fruits and within us and within nature in general. So it just
Yeah.
shows you that we are absolutely all connected. It's just mind blowing.
Mind blowing.
Yes. So what types of people have you been able to meet and how have they influenced your journey?
Do you mean like teachers or just people I've come across in life or
Both, because I feel like you've been on such a journey of evolution with cooking, with food prep,
Mhm.
with nature, with plants, with herbs,
Yeah.
everything that grows to our mind, body, and soul. And I can just
Yeah.
imagine how many doors that's opened up for you and the types of, spiritual community you've been in touch with.
Yeah.
So things like that I was curious about.
Yeah. Well, I have, of course, come across incredible teachers and people in my life. I've traveled a lot. God, I don't even know how to answer this question. I mean, amazing people have come into my life, and I think that's because I am aligned with what I love to do, what I'm on this planet to do. So I attract people who appreciate, a holistic lifestyle or are on this journey as well. Um, in Guatemala, it was really, really amazing to just on the journey of my cookbook journey and, connecting with farmers and connecting with indigenous people. I met incredible souls who are just doing beautiful work in the realm of like biodynamics or traditional farming, that sorts of thing. I mean, people who are doing this type of farming or like land, preservation or stewardship, just have this special place in my heart. I mean, I really connect with that, even though I'm not necessarily a gardener or like a farmer. I love to meet those people because they're special. I
Hmm.
think they truly understand the cycle of life and just the care that goes into the planet is and our foods
Yeah.
really comes back to us, and it's like this beautiful cycle. But lately I've been really connecting with just a lot of people who are also appreciating health sovereignty and freedom and I'm sure we could go into that more if we had time, but we
Yeah.
have this really cool group of, we call them our Star Seeds group, and
Yes. Love it.
yeah, and so it's just all of us who kind of are questioning everything going on and believe that we are empowered souls and on here on this journey on the planet right now to really shine a light on the darkness and bring some
Yeah.
positivity.
It's interesting too how we find each other. People
It's
who
so
are
cool.
honest. It is. It's like a magnet. Like no matter where we are in the world, we find these like-minded souls. And
Right?
it's.
Yeah.
I also want to go back to biodynamic farming because I'm obsessed with it.
Oh, cool. That's
I have
really
a
cool.
friend who actually opened a biodynamic farm here in Serbia called Lavandica, like lavender. But
Oh,
yeah, it's really beautiful. But anyway, so just for our listeners, in case anybody doesn't know what biodynamic farming is, it's basically a safe, self-sustainable, kind of ecosystem where everything supports each other, including like the animals, the plants, and they use the moon cycles to. Well, actually, why don't you take over and tell us? You're
I
probably
think you
better at
did.
description. Okay.
No, I think you did a really great job, really great summary. The wonderful biodynamic farmer that I was really inspired by in Guatemala, he utilizes like seawater and other marine sources and
Wow.
crystals and energy fields
Yeah.
and like the pi frequency and like all of this stuff. I mean,
Mhm.
he incorporates all of this into his beautiful spiral farm, which if you see my cookbook, there's a beautiful photo aerial drone shot of the spirals that he creates, and it's just like on another level, right? It's like so
Wow.
synergistic in it's
In
such a
every way.
synergistic way in every way
Yeah.
um he like combines mechanics and agriculture and health and all of these like just really interesting modalities into creating this just incredibly beautiful system that, yes, like you said, is self-sustaining and really works synergistically and sympathetically, or I think that's the word, um, um, to like harmonize, create a harmonic,
Yes.
perfect little farm. It's so cool.
With no pesticides, with no
Yeah,
chemicals. That's what. And
exactly.
honestly, if you've ever had biodynamic wine, like you
The
don't
best.
feel it the next day.
You're
Just
right.
saying.
I love my wine too.
Me too. I'm never gonna be able to give up my wine. So if you're gonna do healthy wine, biodynamic is, I think, the way to go.
And it's also going to be so high vibe, right? It's just the
Exactly.
highest vibration that you could possibly create.
Exactly. It's so good. So,
Yeah.
so good. Um, so I was going to say, I've heard of the crystals and the number, the
hmm
sequences, pi, all that, but I've never
hmm
heard of using seawater on a biodynamic farm. That's so interesting, and I can't wait to
Yeah.
research that.
Yeah. I think because sea water, or I don't know if he has some process of how he creates this uh, fertilizer from seawater, but it might not just be direct seawater. It's like some process utilizes. But I imagine that it has so many trace minerals in there, right? That it's so nourishing to the
Wow.
plants.
Very
hmm
interesting.
Yeah.
So, if you could summarize all that you're doing in a nutshell so that potential clients know that they need you, what would it be?
Let's see. Well, I am a wellness chef as well as a holistic nutritionist. So my focus is really food as medicine, and I love to support clients in their healing journeys. And I'm currently focusing mostly on doing that through private retreats and cooking classes. I have gotten a little bit out of cooking privately for people, and trying to focus more on doing like one-off kind of spiritual retreats and cooking classes, because I'm just enjoying that so much. And I find that the vibration and the frequency can be just elevated even more when I'm like working one-on-one with you, or when I'm working with people, you know, in a room or cooking for them and they're there. So like I've done some really, really great retreats where like I did a week-long retreat where they were doing some serious personal growth, spiritual work, and I just felt like my food was really helping them integrate everything and process everything and help them elevate. So I think that's kind of what I'm focusing on right now is the retreats and cooking classes.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So where can people find you on social media?
I am on Instagram at Infused Holistic Kitchen, and that's all I do for social media. And then I have a website, www.infusedholistickitchen.com.
Perfect. And before we go, what is your message to the world, and what do you want people to know?
Such a good question. So I think we all have an innate wisdom and an ability to activate our higher purpose, to activate, you know, what we're here on this planet to do. And I love to use the metaphor of, or I love to be inspired by plants, such as a tree, for example, like the oak tree. This tiny seed has the blueprint of everything that it needs to emerge into this perfect version of itself, right? Mm-hmm. And so I use that as my inspiration for empowerment over my journey and my health, and trust that I have the innate wisdom and that spirit within to guide me towards my higher purpose.
Beautiful. You are magnificent. I haven't met you yet, but I already love you.
Oh, you too, Jessica.
I'm really happy that you came on today, and I took so much insight away from this, and I'm sure our audience did as well. So thank you so much. And I look forward to exploring the recipes in your cookbook. Everybody check out her cookbook and try out her recipes. You can follow her on Instagram, check out her website. She's doing amazing things. Kassia, thank you once again, and keep in touch.
Sounds good. Thanks so much, Jessica. It's been a pleasure.
You too. Bye now.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of A Billion Realities with your host, Jessica Gerlach. Visit us online at abillionrealities.com and follow us on social media at A Billion Realities. A Billion Realities is available on Spreaker, iHeartRadio, iTunes, Spotify, Alexa, Reach.tv, or your favorite podcast service. A Billion Realities is a proud member of the HC Universal Network family of podcasts. For more great episodes and content, visit hcuniversalnetwork.com today. Thanks for tuning in, everyone, and until next time, remember, we are all but one of a billion realities.